Because if, for example, an offender is raping a victim and he is saying things like, oh, I am sorry, you could know that he was not motivated by anger or sadism. He might just be motivated by lust. If he's raping somebody and he's asking things like, I hope you are not feeling pains, you could say that is verbalizing concern. If he's raping somebody and he's saying that God will punish you, wicked women, I will deal with you, I will finish. I mean, there are some verbalizations that shows the desire to extract revenge, wickedness, sadism, control. And so you ask such unfavorable questions. So you need to train people, groom detectives in such a way that when they talk to victims, they will be able to connect with them at a level where victims will feel very safe to confide in them.
DCP Franco, thank you very much. The program is over. I said the program is...
I should sign off.
No. We had you yesterday. We're still going to have you today. But of course, this is a very serious subject matter. But let's turn now to Esther Uzoma, who, of course, who's a regular face on Good Morning Nigeria. It's just taking us through the experiences people have. But is there an epidemic of sexual violence in Nigeria? And if so, what are the likely constituting factors? There are reports from the campuses, there are reports from neighborhoods, there are reports from IDP camps. Virtually, I mean,
what's going on? That's a huge question. Something is happening in this country. India used to be the worst place to be a female. Today, regrettably, Nigeria is championing it. From the homes, some of the cases presently I'm handling in courts. I'm talking about fathers who constantly engage in sexual intercourse with their own daughters. All right? I'm talking about policemen, for instance. I had one John, who violated a young boy and has been doing it for a whole term of 3 months. He's still in custody. I'm talking about the Mopol man in Nasarawa who sexually, abused a 2-year-old girl and whose wife testified in court, said, oh, the girl started seeing her menstruation in my house. And the judge says, madam, at 2 years. So something is going wrong. And one of the things is that our security architecture is under so much pressure. So much pressure. The criminal knows how stretched, our security architecture is presently across the states of Nigeria. All right? And so what do? Is they become parasitic, opportunistic crimes. That thing they've been harboring says, they know that the police is busy looking for the man with the gun. What do? They simply have sex with anybody and anybody. The driver, you send your driver, drop these children to school, he corners them in one bush and violates. That is what is happening now. That's as if it's no holds barred. All the sex demons from hell are presently resident in Nigeria. I was talking with the OC Legal for FCT Command. He said, at least in 1 week, at least 5 children, babies, those who are still wearing pampers, somebody is defiling them. All right? And now that we are confronted with this whole challenge, we also have to rise to it. Calm seas, they say, do not make, captains or great seamen. The Nigerian police, particularly under this IG, there's a stance he has taken, and we have not shied away from commending him. Whenever that response is made, whoever you are, whether it is rape or assault, whenever the law is galvanized. He's not shielding anybody. That is a good thing. Way back, you have to pull down the heavens. Pull down the heavens to ensure that some cases go to court. But right now, all he needs to do is to just send him a text message. You don't even need to know him. Send him a text message. He will locate you and then provoke the process of that. That is fantastic. Okay? And then even in the FCT command, there was just one, conviction they just had. A pastor in Nyanya who was casting out demons and having sex, impregnated a minor, conducted an abortion. The law rose, say, listen, you are facing it. A huge tongue-speaking pastor. You understand what I mean? That is encouraging. However, in the midst of all that, you see...
Did the demons re-enter him after he cast them out?
Well, he's in prison.
Okay. All right.
Yes, he's in prison. He's in Suleja prison. I'm sure he will meet an exorcist there.
In that place,
yes. And then the feminine gender, you see, there's an outrage. There's an outrage. In places of worship, women are gathering together. And I'm telling you, both the poor and the rich. Because they know nobody is spared. When you hear such thing, what you think about is that you're a beautiful little girl. You see that you're one idiot somewhere. Exactly. And so women are galvanizing, facing Christian institutions, facing religious institutions. Say, listen, this has to stop. Do not shield anybody. That's a good sign. But then again, if we look at the laws critically, the penal code is old, very old. There are evolving dynamic laws like the VAP Act. All right? Under the VAP Act, rape can be when an object, it does not have to be, the biological parts. When an object is inserted into another person against that person's will. Under the VAP Act says, listen, rape, you have raped the person. And under the VAP Act, a woman can also rape a man. The penal code has no idea. The penal code restricts rape to a man. It said a man is said to commit rape. That's how Section 282 starts. Even the analogous provision in the criminal code. But penal code said, VAP said, listen, a person is said to commit rape when he or she, that is fantastic. But then when the process of proving that a man has been raped, frankly, that would be difficult because, when a man is willing, he's willing. If it's not...
don't get into that sexism yet.
It's not difficult because if we probe into that, you discover that, we've had the stories, perhaps not in our clan, where a school teacher, a lady, for instance, had to rape a 12-year-old boy. And so it happens, a minor. I find exactly a minor. But it's a rape. It's a rape. Okay, now...
What you are saying, Kira, it used to happen in South Africa. I don't know whether it's still happening. Ladies who were said to be HIV positive go about in gangs, pick up a victim, and sexually molest him. A man.
And the first are not willing us to do.
Well, I mean, we'll come back again to the categorization as Kirian is. Yes.
So let's have our opening comment. I've been finding it so difficult to co-present this program because of the topic. Now, what, in your view, should be the reason for this prevalence of rape, this dehumanizing act that we'll be witnessing over time?
Well, in my view, it's, to start with, it's very, very alarming, it's surprising, and it's on the increase. The incidence of rape is on the increase. It's not limited to any class. It cuts across classes. You find it everywhere, in the church, in the mosque, in school, in our homes. So you begin to wonder what the problem is. Why are people gradually or surprisingly becoming interested in raping people in a society where you have a lot of women, you have a lot of girls that you can just walk up to and talk to them. And then we even have cases such as date rape. So it is very, very surprising to see that these issues are coming up, and on a daily basis, they keep coming up. For instance, take the case of a father who is sleeping with his daughter. There is a case we are handling at the moment in FIDA Abuja branch. And what the man said that the child is too beautiful and that he doesn't even understand why another person should be the one who will disvirgin the child. Oh my God. So you can see that a lot of people are sick.
Should this be a mental case or something?
It should be. It is not normal that you have a father say that to his biological child, that because you're too beautiful, I cannot allow another man to touch you. You know, so it's there are so many reasons that you don't even understand what is happening and why people are going into raping women and children. It's an alarming situation.
I'm just wondering, still with both of you, madams, you know, when we discussed population explosion on this program a couple of weeks or so ago, one of our guests, who's an expert on population issues, referenced in passing the upsurge in sexual violence. That competition for resources is quite small. There's a great deal of frustration, and people are just some maladjusted persons are therefore finding expression in sexual violence that we are seeing. But where do we have these cases most common? In crowded urban areas or low density suburbs? Sometimes, occasionally, I'm sure there are reports from the rural areas. But what is the geography of this?
From my experience, particularly, the matters I've done in court, they are prevalent, in the slums, regrettably. The one I did at FCT High Court, was from the slums of Buhari. All right, the one in Nasarawa State, was in those places where, even as I talk about it, I cringe. People live in houses facing each other. You see green water flowing. My neighbor, my uncle. It's also the tragedy, Kingsley, of the rich man is that this woman is obliged to keep up a facade. That's the tragedy. But you see the poor, for instance, the one I did in Nasarawa, this woman did not keep quiet. She saw her daughter, 2-year-old, bleeding in this Mopo man's house. She screamed, everybody came. She didn't, but you see, my encounter with the rich, they need to keep up the facade. To their Facebook friends, to their WhatsApp friends, their Instagram family and well-wishers that, we are perfect. But you see, something is wrong. All right? But for these people in these very densely populated areas, they demand inside justice. In fact, for the one in Nasarawa, it took the police to intervene. So the people wanted to burn down that Mopo man's house. Okay, and then he was immediately court-martialed, facing, dismissed. The law took his course and all that. So it is in places of high density. And another factor is this: we confuse the children. Everybody is not uncle. Everybody is not family. And, the child gets confused. Because, when you say, hey, give uncle this, give daddy this, there's a level of trust you build in that child for anybody with that appellation. So we confuse the kids. And then when we don't talk about the child's biological parts, for instance, I know I can't mention those parts now because NBC said, please don't mention it. But then the children knows. So if we say these places are sacred, when somebody is violating those places, they don't talk about it. They think, oh, something has happened to me. Meanwhile, the cartoons they watch talk about it. Cartoons. And so we confuse the child from, the messages. Everybody is not uncle. Everybody, don't sit on everybody's lap. That's how this child. So you find, accidents waiting to happen. Grenades waiting to explode because this child is doing what? Bottling so much. Do you know that I had a case? A man impregnated his daughter. The wife was taking that child to mountain to cast demons. This girl is pregnant. She never, the father, eventually when this girl spoke, he said, Mom, you didn't listen to me. The first day daddy touched me, I told you, you said I'm possessed. So she didn't bother. She just had a baby, by the way. And doesn't want the law. Because she wants, I don't know. I don't know, Kingsley. She's still living under that roof.
With the father
and the children.
and the newborn baby?
Yes.
They're all living.
No. Well, I think the law enforcement agency will have
see,
to pick you and
yeah,
they will have
yeah.
to step
But
in.
at the point when they say, I don't want the police, they say, listen, we
No,
don't want.
they will have to step in. I mean, at some point, it's that's a
So
product of an
healthy.
incestuous relationship.
We also need to break the culture of silence.
I agree.
We need to break the culture of silence. And because of the stigmatization that comes with it, people are, they will rather be quiet about it. If I talk, my daughter will not get married. Who wants to marry my daughter? And all of that. People will say, oh, look at you. You have been raped. You have been violated and all of that. But we need to break all of that and come out. Let people speak up. If you're being violated or if you're being raped or anything, people should learn to, it's difficult really, but they need to build confidence in the system and come out knowing that when they come out, they will get
Have support,
justice.
yes.
They will have support. We cannot be doing the same. We can't keep doing this and people are suffering, our children are suffering, our women are suffering, and also by extension, our boys are also suffering. So we need to break that culture of silence, and we all have duty to help people to end and break the culture of silence.
Before we turn to DCP Frank Mba, may I remain with you at the job? And my question is, should there be any reason to blame the victim apart from the toddlers or the those that are defiled, the minors that are defiled, the adult women, who are raped? Should that be any form of blame? Because from what we read in recent times about of course, I may not mention that, but we know about the rape that has to do with clergy and the lady for several years, and she came up to say that on air, and people blamed her. One, you didn't shout. Two, why were you there? And all of that. There should not be a situation where the victim could be blamed, perhaps for being wherever she is at the moment, or for even accepting a date, with someone you've never met before, like those who do that on Facebook, right? You have a friend in Lagos, you've not seen him before, you've been interacting for 1 year or more, and he invites you to Lagos. You go there, you recall the story of Cynthia, in Lagos, and all that. So should that be a point where you blame the victim?
Well, I think the law readily comes in here because I cannot seem to see any reason why we should blame the victims. And that is why the law talks about consent. And even consent that is obtained with fraud or by threat is not consent, or by deceit is not consent. So it is not enough to say because she was found with me at night or because she agreed to go out with me. That is not sufficient reason for us to blame a victim of rape. A victim of rape needs empathy. They need empathy. They don't need to be blamed for any reason that it was because I went out. Or sometimes we hear things such as her dress was skimpy. She was dressed in a way. Yes, she was asking for it. Her dress was provocative. For God's sake, that is not enough reason why you should pounce on her and rape her. So there is no justification whatsoever for anybody to rape another
So
person.
the victim cannot be in the wrong place at the
Sorry?
wrong time. So the victim cannot be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
No, not enough reason for a rape.
Yes, just to support my sister. Acts, criminal offenses, do not have, you can't judge them on the altar of morality. That is why we, champion that we are in a civilized society. There are laws that guide our conduct. Consent to a date or even party at night is not an invitation for bodily violation. It's not an invitation for rape. Listen, when a woman says no, she actually means no. The way we raise our boys, who grew up with so much sense of privilege, male privilege is still alive. And sometimes it is women that raise these boys. If you see the sense of entitlement, I control the remote control, and then it starts from the home and extends to other female. That has to be the victim of a crime. It's like blaming a rich man for being rich, and then he's boggled. Okay? It's like blaming what about the idiot? The Punch newspaper today was talking about an idiot. That's an imbecile that was raped. What about that? What about the baby that was violated? The baby's fault is that she was not wearing pampers. Hello? Let us not even think about generating any kind of thought, evolving thought around the issue of blame of any sort to the victim of any crime, be it rape, violation, assault, armed robbery. We can't begin to do that. If we do that, the criminals have won.
Okay, well, that's an aspect related to victim-instigated crimes in criminology.
That's right.
DCP Franco, I know you were itching to respond to one of the issues that they raised, but still on all of this, how is the law responding to this upsurge of sexual violence?
First of all, I key in out obviously to almost everything I've said. The prevalence of this crime is actually not new, really. It's always been there. The difference is that today, people are speaking up. The social media is helping in throwing up these things. People, the internet penetration, the availability of phone, and again, the fact that even the law enforcement agents are also becoming more responsive and more transparent in their operations. So people get to hear and read and know these things. These things are not just happening in the cities. They're also happening in the villages. And in the villages, there are even more concealment and secrecy surrounding the whole thing. Because the internet penetration is low, the social media is at its primacy. And sometimes even the law enforcement agents and the criminal justice system apparatus are far off from them. So these things happen and nobody gets to know about them. But there's something that talks. She tried to look at the laws, the penal code as it defines rape. And this is an area where I just need to make a point very quickly before I move to other things. I think it is high time our lawmakers reviewed our laws, particularly when it comes to the issue of the definition of rape. Our legal definition of rape in Nigeria is damn too narrow, is damn too restrictive. Even in countries as small as Liberia, they have a very liberalized definition of rape. And today, we must redefine rape to cover everything. It just don't have to be penetration by the male organ. It has to be every form of intercourse, sexual intercourse that is obtained by force, by duress, by threat, and fundamentally without the consent of the person. Whether it's oral, whether it's anal, whether it's and the rest of them. And whether you are using an external object, whether you use a vibrator, whatever you use against the male or the female, so we must pressure our legislators, the CSOs must galvanize themselves and mount intensive pressures on them so that we can cover the field. Coming to the issue of abuse of minors, Kingsley, is the funny thing is that there is a slight difference in the approach of the predators, of the offenders. And that's why when they abuse minors, it takes more time to find out. In fact, statistics shows that whenever you are arrested, and it's clear from our work out, on the front line, we discover that there is hardly any child sexual offender that you arrest and it turns out to be the first time. The reason is because they must have done it continuously for a long time, sometimes before luck runs against them. Why? Because there is a clear trajectory, there is a clear procedure. Some of them are members of the family. They warm up to the parents of the child, to the child.
The uncle,
they are not just social deviants, perverts, and psychopaths. No, they are acquaintances, and they follow a defined approach. For example, they start with what you can describe as the engagement process. Under the engagement process, they try to get close to the child. They try to get close to the family. And when they begin to get close to the child, at this stage, the child, even if he's a very intelligent one, will not have clear idea. All they see is that this uncle is showing them love. And then gradually, they introduce either enticement or entrapment. Enticement means they start giving the child gifts. It could be something as minor as Tom chocolate, candies, and they begin to entice the child, and the child begins to love them and trust them. It can be entrapment. In entrapment, what do? They can gradually introduce the child to things like pornography, begin to take nude pictures of the child, begin to make nude videos of the child. And they get to a stage where they will begin to use that to blackmail the child. If you say no, I will show this to the world. And in rare cases, they go straight to the use of force and threats. Now, once they successfully go through the engagement process, the next thing is the sexual interaction. And it could be anything from compelling the child to touch them and fondle them before they begin to fondle the child. It could be outright abuse, penetration of the child. It could be anal, it could be anything. The moment they are done with the sexual interaction, the next thing you see, they work so hard to keep it secret. And that's the secrecy stage. They will do everything and all things to make sure that that act is never known. And once they succeed at the secrecy stage, that means they will continue to abuse the child for a very long time. Sometimes the secrecy stage fails, and then there is a disclosure. Disclosure can be intentional. That's when the child on his own or her own speaks out. But that can become complicated if the parents are untrusting. Like the scenario where you painted, where the child spoke about the abuse by the father, and the mother says, "Shut up, you need deliverance." In other cases, disclosure can be unintentional. Probably there is a pregnancy, and everybody starts screaming, "Who did this to you?" There could be physical signs on the body. There could be swelling in the private parts. There could also be infection of STD. And then you begin to see these charges. This is unintentional disclosure. And once they go through disclosure, then you now begin to manage. You go to what they call suppression. Again, different from secrecy. Suppression here is sometimes the family members begin intentionally organized way of how do we keep this away. And this is what this is one of the key things that works against successful investigation and successful prosecution. And even when, as law enforcement agents, we try to force our way through, you see the entire family becomes hostile. And once you have uncooperative, hostile witnesses, you run into problems. So once we understand this, it is easier for us to begin to look out for those signs. So if you have a child and suddenly some guy somewhere is beginning to throw unnecessary gift items to the child, begin to ask questions. Or if you have this man in the neighborhood that at all times he wants little girls to be around him, little boys to be around him, and yet you cannot find him with adult male friends or adult female friends, that should be a red flag. So the processes of child sexual abuses and the processes of adult sexual abuses, even though the goal might be the same, can be a bit, the approach and the style can be a little bit different. diverse.
These are an implicit analysis, of the stages, stages of this, and it's a whole work, for a man to begin to think in that direction and develop those processes. It's really a crime because it's a predetermined, planned and done and executed.
Absolutely.
Right.
I mean, it's a criminal mind at work.
Exactly. And on the social media just last week, we saw a young man in the village. That's like he said that it happens also in localities where a young man of about 32 raped an 80-year-old woman who is running a shop, somewhere. 80 years. So you can imagine how. In fact, it's unbecoming. That's the point that this is Frank raised, and that's on the issue of prosecution. And that's why I'd like other lawyers to come in. Is it really difficult to prosecute cases, and where does the burden of proof lie? Yeah,
it's fantastic. Now, there's a dynamism that we have brought to the prosecution of these offences. For instance, for the policeman who violated a young boy, for 3 months, we actually, first of all, while the criminal part was going on, we used fundamental rights. And when we came to court, it was not done before, never. The court asked us, fundamental rights? I said, sure. We argued very strongly that fundamental rights to dignity.
That's not dignity.
We did it before Justice Ojo of our City High Court. And the right to dignity of this young boy has been breached. We also argued very strongly that his life has also been, the right to life has also been breached.
Impaired, yeah.
Yes, by this consistent anal penetration. And at the end of the day, we had a medical doctor who came and testified that yes, this constant anal penetration actually impaired the health, jeopardizes, and then the court saw with us, and then fundamental rights, we used it successfully. It was wow. And then after we did it in FCT,
what was the relief?
We asked for damages. Okay, so what they gave, he forfeited his house. He said he's a policeman in Buare. All right, so that was the relief, and then the court also ordered constant medical, care. It was not done before. So these are the dynamics we are evolving. All right, we did it there. We did it in Nasarawa. We did it in Kano for the 6-month-old baby Khadija that was raped. Now, strictly, we encourage other lawyers to use it. When we used it, it was not done. But the court said yes, upheld the argument. And then strictly for the criminal trial, penetration. Now, depending on under which law a person is being charged, if it's under the penal code, prove that it has occurred. All right, in that concept, you have to prove penetration. And the law, the dynamism, the judicial activism, the prophecies coming from the court, they say, listen, penetration, it doesn't mean you are mere touch, mere contact, suffices for penetration. Now look at what FCT is doing. That's why I commend and I actually advocate for more funding for their gender units.
Oh, the police.
I do very, very strongly. Once that report is made, the first thing they do is take you to the hospital. All right? Even though after some months, evidence of body fluid can still be found. But we don't have that cutting-edge technology. So penetration to prove rape is not difficult anymore. Most times, the courts relies on availability, isolation, circumstantial evidence is used. And corroboration now suffices who did you tell? You don't have to screen. I talked to my mother about it. I told my school teacher about it. The law has now evolved. Say, listen, that will suffice. So all that is necessary, therefore, is you have to approach and provoke the machinery of justice.
Esther, thank you very much. Mrs. Adejo Andrew, let's get your own take on how the law responds to instances of sexual violence, or how the law should respond or ought to respond.
Okay. The law actually has ample enough provisions to take care of the cases of rape, the case of rape. If you look at the penal code, although it's an old law, you see that the punishment for rape is life imprisonment. The same thing with criminal code in the South. And then if you also go to the VAP Act, the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, the law says that for rape, in fact, it is the first section of that law.
That's right.
Rape is the very, very first section of that law. And it says that the punishment for rape, you know, the VAP Act is even more dynamic. It's more liberal. The interpretation or definition of rape is wider in the VAP Act. And it says that the punishment for rape is life imprisonment. It also provides for issues such as gang rape, where a person is gang raped, the punishment for each of those offenders is 20 years. So it's not as if there are no laws. The laws are there. But for me, I still think that why we don't have a lot of cases prosecuted successfully is because people are really not coming out. And even in cases and instances where they come out, a lot of times along the way, you meet a brick wall. They tell you, just like Mr. Frank Umba said, they tell you once your witnesses say they are no longer, they don't want to continue, they don't want to go on, what do? They mess up the case for you. You're stopped. You cannot proceed. But if they cooperate with you and you continue the matter, the laws are there. We have enough provisions to punish these offenders. But human resources, our people are not willing to continue with prosecution. Sometimes you even have parents of a child, for instance, say they are going to collect compensation. Sometimes they collect as low as 50,000, 70,000. But like under the VAP Act, which I talked about, apart from the fact that there's imprisonment, there's also the issue of compensation for the victim. So once you successfully secure a conviction under the VAP Act, apart from that conviction, the victim will be compensated. So we have all of those protections.
Prosecution. How diligent is prosecution? You talked about the fact that sometimes witnesses are unwilling to be of help, but who takes on the task of prosecution? Is it the DPP or the police? I will return to you to get your response to this, and indeed the two other guests who are with us after we return from this short break.
Oh boy, clear this thing now. No be only to connect lights.
Come you and yourself now.
Now wow. Oh boy, calm down now. Oga Kasali electrician who will look for it.
Oh.
Oga Kasali, come help us fix this wire now.
Sorry. I no longer carry out illegal connection. It puts the lives of people at risk and can cause fire outbreak and disrupt power supply. I will never be part of anything that has to do with this any longer because change begins with me.
Oh boy, wetin you talk make sense. Oh boy, make we carry this ladder comot.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, welcome back, and still Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're still discussing sexual violence in Nigeria, and our three guests are still with us in the studio. Just before we took that short break, I was asking the question of diligent prosecution and who undertakes it. Of course, allied to the question of diligent prosecution also has to do with the trajectory of the case. On the average, how long does it take to dispose of a rape matter? Because if we know how the judicial system works in the country, could we also, in that circumstance, if it is slow, fast track?
Okay. Who prosecutes under the Administration of Criminal Justice Act? The Office of the AGF, the Director Public Prosecution, prosecutes, and then also you can apply for fiat as an individual to prosecute the matter. Now, talking about how long prosecution takes, it depends. It's not a clear cut. It depends on so many factors. Sometimes it could depend on the prosecutor himself. Does he have enough facts? Is he ready to go on with the matter? And then, of course, we also have the courts. But under the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, we know that matters go on day-to-day basis. So it is fast. It is no longer as slow as it used to be.
Okay, I think one good thing that has happened in terms of reporting of rape cases is social media. You know, because many people are now having the courage to come out to talk. You know, even when the rape took place some years ago, some people are coming up to say something, and this on the reportage we're talking about maybe a thing of the past. You know, with time. Let's return to DCP once again. A short while ago, you were talking about the issue of a prosecution. Who does that? You know, how does the process begin?
I think Mrs. Adejandro has clearly captured that. The only thing I want to add is that because of the sensitivity and the importance attached to diligent and successful prosecution of rape cases in the police today, whenever a rape case will be handled by the police, it must be handled by police lawyers from the police legal department. In fact, the celebrated case of the pastor from Nyanya who was recently convicted was handled by a police prosecutor. He's an assistant commissioner of police. He's ACP Simon Law, and he successfully cracked that case. And so many other cases in Lagos, in Lagos, where I equally worked as the number 2 man at the state CID in Panti. All the rape cases we have are usually handled by the legal department. Sometimes, of course, we literally outsource some to the DPP because of the volume, because you would not, in Lagos, you will be, the sheer number of cases of rape, particularly the sexual abuse of minors, is so mind-boggling that you come to work every day and you literally say things and you think you've seen it all, and then you come the next day, you see some others and you hear some other stories, and you interface with suspects and victims, and you're like, what is this?
Just let's take you back. Earlier, while you were profiling, the interaction between an offender and a victim, you talk about some of the things the offender might say. What have you found out in the course of interacting with a sexual predator? What do you read of him, or in a rare case, as it probably is reported, of her?
Well, I've seen different ones, and I tell you one story. There is a guy in Lagos that were arrested. What he does is he gives women rides at night, ostensibly free rides, and then he will do everything to make sure he sexually violates them. Then in the day, he does entirely different thing. He comes out and he steals from women. How does he do that? He drives to a busy place like Allen. It could be via, it could be anywhere. And he sees the lady and he asks him if she's going his way. And if there is a consensus there, he gives you a ride. After a while, he orchestrates a defect in the car, and the car starts jerking.
During the day?
Yes, during the day. And the car will eventually stop. And then 90% of the ladies will step out of the car, leaving their bags.
He zooms off.
And then he pretends he wants some people to push the car. and then they'll push the car. And then, usually he will again pretend as if he would just want to do vum, 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 and then stop somewhere. And then he goes away. It took a very long time. When you have a mystery criminal, and then we were all thinking, how do we crack this case? How do we crack this case? Eventually, we cracked him. And during our interaction with him, what did he say? He said he was out for revenge. And that he will continue to do it until he dies. What was the problem? He said there was a particular day he did a transaction. And somebody paid him the money, a lot of money in dollars. And then he went to Eco Hotel to collect the money. And when he collected the money, out of excitement, he put the money in the car, went to Bar Beach. Before Bar Beach was taken over by Eco Atlantic, Bar Beach was a beehive of activities. So he parked his car, Kuramo Beach or Bar Beach, somewhere along the line. And then he picked a girl. And a call girl negotiated. He was trying to celebrate. And you see, people are weird. People have different ways of celebrating success. He was trying to celebrate this dollars, about $20,000 or something deal that he... Yeah. So he took this girl. And then they got chatting. They negotiated the price. Everything was okay. They now had to do it in the car. But he said that as soon as he got involved with the girl and kissed some parts of the girl's body, he was knocked off.
Was that a mommy water or something?
It wasn't a mommy water. It's a simple thing that as detectives, as law enforcement, we know. Some of the women, the so-called call girls, can actually apply some substances around their upper body. In which case, if you did kiss those body, those things are tasteless. They are virtually tasteless, but they will knock you off. So that was what happened to him. He got that sleeping pill and got knocked off and slept in that car till the next day. And then the young lady, whom of course he doesn't know and he can never recognize, took his key, ransacked the car, opened the boot, and took the money away. This is the story he told us. And so from that day, he became miserable. And there was an anger targeted generically to the women folk. And so every time he sees a woman, he wants to extract revenge. But this is just one, like one in a million.
In a million. I'm sorry, but this is not conditional time, But issue, I want you to land by letting us into the issue of the possibility of counseling such persons, because this is a serial predator, out of anger,
big time.
Yes. So,
Obviously, these are areas where we are not doing well in this country, and we must tell ourselves the truth. The police is doing so much, but there is so much that the police cannot do. We don't have a functional social system. We don't have a functional, effective social work system. And that's why challenges that has to do with drug abuse, challenges that has to do with suicide tendencies, challenges that has to do with perverse sexual orientation, we don't readily have places. We don't readily have helplines. We don't readily have governmental agencies staffed by the requisite skills to actually do those counseling. At the police station level, we do that a lot. We try to talk to people. But you know how busy and how stretched we are. So these are areas that people like Kingsley and Kirian must pressure the system to actually fix them.
All right, this will be Franco, but thank you very much. We have a number of tweets that have come in, so let's take the reactions from our viewers. Chris Simeon has this: anyone who is caught in an act of rape should face capital punishment. That's all.
Well, law advocacy, rape is a very serious act that should be seen as such. While the act is condemnable and unjustified, it behooves the individual, particularly women, to address appropriately in order to avoid stories that touch the heart.
Now, Delay Jack Solomon, sexual assault occurs worldwide and is particularly pervasive in the developing world, and the means, expertise, and facilities for managing cases of sexual assault are grossly inadequate. Now, all mechanisms must be put in place to stop this hydra-headed menace.
Omobola on Babs, rape is largely underreported. This is not unconnected with the trauma the victim has to live with for the rest of their lives. Notwithstanding, the stigma concomitant with it should be reported. Victims should rather live with it than voice it out. Society must rise up for them.
Festus Akimboy, well, there is massive underreporting of rape in Nigeria, and we are in danger of this going from bad to worse. Now, if rape and other sexual offenders are not diligently prosecuted and convicted, victims of rape must be encouraged and celebrated for speaking out.
All right, Joseph, rape has gone viral because of loss of values and ethics. The dressing of our ladies nowadays is a contributory factor. The government and religious leaders should do something about it. After all, there are either Christians or Muslims.
Festus Akimboy again. Now, the number of rape and other sexual offenses prosecuted in Nigeria would appear to be extremely low, which is worrying. Now, government at all levels must provide the resources needed to properly support victims and ensure rape offenders are brought to justice.
Dennis Ujo, thanks for this topic. Your panel have done something good this morning. My question is that what about those that do take ladies to hotel to do sex business?
Now, Tolly MSA has this one. It says, rape is prevalent because there is no strong deterrence and it is not treated as a crime against the state. That's not correct. Rape is a crime against the state. Now, police are not trained on how to handle cases and states, again, that's not correct. DCP Frank Barr has been talking about all of this. But he writes here that only death penalty will address this menace. But the points that you raised, by the way, that rape is not treated as a crime against the state. Rape is a crime against the state. Right. And the police are not trained. Frank Umba has told about the various units that have been created in the police to deal with instances of rape in terms of support as well as prosecution.
All right, from Birikis, my family, teach the young ones parts of their body, and that no one should touch them inappropriately. Do not leave your children unattended. Ask them questions about indecent touching. Make communication easy and open. Talk to teens about keeping their integrity and boost their self-confidence and esteem.
Yeah, well, Kirian, that's another set of tweets that we just got now. Download the Ndayebo. Still, it says parents must teach their children about sex education, how to be bold to express themselves and strong enough to fight for their lives. They must watch out for those perverted uncles, cousins, relatives, close family, friends, neighbors, mates, and lesson teachers, etc.
All right, from Tolisma too, he said.
No, I just dismissed that a while ago.
Okay, exactly. Okay, but this is the second time around. Okay, all right. Now let's go to Usman Banikantu. He says the rising cases of sexual harassment and violence in Nigeria may not be unconnected with the following reasons: indecent dressing by women, inability to marry at the right age, food, high sexual urge, decadence of immorality. The headway is capital punishment.
Now, Ozode Chukwebuka tweets, our laws on sexual offenses should, as a matter of urgency, be reformed to ensure that adequate justice is meted out in cases of rape and sexual assault.
All right, Sam Jr., my contributions to this program, some parents contribute a lot because some girls go out with indecent dress and their parents will be happy about it instead of correcting them.
Engineer Kanu Engineer Kanu Emeka tweets, please, we need to teach our children sensitive touches, and when anybody is touching them in such specific ways, they should report immediately. Now, the two gorgeous women in the house dressed decently. They should please tell our ladies to dress decently as well.
Okay, Oba Dafidi, there's little gender equity in the discourse. Why does society ignore the fact that males are also socially exploited?
Now, Taye Ogunshola, sexual violence is an act of immorality. It's an offense. It's a crime. Now, government needs to act fast to deal with the offenders who need also to be punished severely and register them in an offender's book for life. That brings me to a point. Yes, that brings me to a point. Is there a register anywhere of sexual predators?
Yes. Section 1 of the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act talks about a sex offenders register. And if we have been following on lately with the DG of NAPTIP, she has said that they have already opened that register where they will register the names of sex offenders. So there is a register at NAPTIP, at the NAPTIP office, because they are the ones in charge. They are the ones charged with the responsibility of the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. So there is a sex offender register. So anybody who the state secures a conviction against, the name of that person is entered in that register.
Is it just name, or you take the biometrics? I mean, elsewhere, Frank Obashi should be familiar with this. Elsewhere, you take you temperate whoever the individual is, so that when he is picked up, you find again abroad where some of these sexual offenders prowl around parks or some isolated locations, and perhaps he appears somewhere. It's usually, so is it just the name?
You see, we look at how terrible our data management process is. It also comes to bear. Driver's license, you give a data, international passport, PAM, ID card, PAM. Everybody is gathering personal data. There's no harmonized collection. All right? And so that is the same problem. We agree it is necessary. NAPTIP is doing a good job trying to have this, collect the biometrics of offenders. But the truth of the matter is this. Anybody who has ever been accused, because the process of proof is a different thing. Anybody who has ever been accused of any form of sexual act, if you're an employer, you should know. It should be easily ascertainable. So the crime register, therefore, of the Nigerian police should be something that the public can access. Because they have that register of cases per month, the type of offenses, people in detention, they have it. Why can't we access it?
But an allegation doesn't necessarily amount to a conviction.
Yes, I'm not saying that but I'm saying that if anybody has ever been accused of such thing, because the process of proof is a different thing. But if you have ever been, if your daughter has ever said, listen, I'm pregnant by you, all right? And the police, that's the public domain, is it not? If you have such record, let us have it. I should be able to access it. Because it will now determine who becomes my megad, who becomes my chef, who becomes my driver. Because tendencies, from my line of work.
They repeat themselves.
Oh, yes. They just don't stop.
If I think for time, I was actually going to ask you to talk about the issue of counseling. Because, of course, Frank said that, of course, the police is stretched already. They are doing a bit of it, but they need more bodies or agencies, to also
social welfare department.
Exactly.
No, social welfare department is extremely. It doesn't exist. Look at in FCT, they have a cube, and that is the social welfare.
All right. We'll be there for now. We've actually touched on different aspects of this topic this morning. It's a touchy one, and every family should be concerned about that. That's what we saw in the responses, of some of our viewers at home. And so that's how we conclude this particular edition of Good Morning Nigeria on a Friday. And first of all, I'd like to appreciate our guest, DCP Frank Mba, First Public Relations Officer, is always available here whenever we need him. Thank you so much for being here again.
Thank you.
For our show. And Esther Uzoma, legal practitioner and national coordinator of Proactive Gender Initiative. She's also one of our special guests on the show on Good Morning Nigeria, always around when we need her. And I would say the same for Rachel Adejo, International Federation of Women Lawyers, FIDA FUT chairperson. It's been wonderful sharing your thoughts on the show this morning.
Thank you very much.
All right, as we conclude this edition of the program, let's take you on sports.